Good evening, my pink pentaceratops. I can't believe research for this video went so deep. This isn't a ZZZ lore video anymore. This is a video about how Zenless truly unravels all of the secrets and unlocks all of the mysteries of the Honkai verse. I wanted to make a video about the leader of the Falconane mercenary troop, but it ended up being connected to Hoyoverse lore, and after my deep dive, I think most Hoyoverse fans are sleeping on Zenless Zone Zero. We see the effects of the Stellaron disasters in Honkai Star Rail, but we don't explore what it means to be in an apocalyptic scenario like that. In Honkai Impact, the weight of Honkai disasters feel like a minor inconvenience for the characters, something to overcome. In Zenless, the Hollow disaster is the end of the world. The Earth is regressing. Eridu is underwater again. The Great Flood is here, and the prophesied savior is going to die from their own overambition. There is no ark to rescue the people of New Eridu, no ferryman to cross the river, and no gods to take pity on them. The creator will just stare in silence. We cannot talk about this without discussing the most important concepts in the Hoyoverse: the Honkai, finality, imaginary tree, and the Sea of Quanta. The Hollows are a Honkai disaster, and we know Honkai grows with civilizations. It comes from finality, a multi-dimensional hive mind alien, and we know finality, or terminus, moves backwards through time because that is only from our 3D perspective. We know they do not actually move through time. It is just an illusion. The next big one is the imaginary tree, where technically everything gets its energy from, but we're gonna find out not really. This is the thing holding all of the living worlds together. When those worlds die, they fall into the Sea of Quanta. This is the goo around the living worlds and the imaginary tree. These concepts are hard to see in isolation, but this is why the trefoil is so important in the symbolism for every Hoyo game. They are profoundly intertwined to the point of being the same thing. Okay, enough of the wacky takes on the imaginary tree. It is the eternal inflation multiverse theory from real-world astrophysics. This states that the universe is expanding from the Big Bang and forming a quilt-like network of different universes. These have their own laws of physics for a few reasons, but one of them is the universal constant is different. Their own bubbles of universe, or bubble universes, create their own laws of physics. This is also what they're called in the Honkai games. The whole universe has a cycle, and the bubble worlds within have their own cycles as well. The Sea of Quanta is the scramble of information that functions like a dark wall. We don't have the technology, math, or resources to truly understand beyond our minuscule perspective in real life. How can we expect to do that in a fantasy game? We can't even fully understand the fourth dimension or why we are most likely inside of a black hole. We learn that it isn't a push and pull, something to grapple with in Zenless. It is a cycle that every part of reality is bound to. Our most intimate moments with these concepts show up in unexpected places. In stark contrast to their presence in Honkai Impact, in Zenless, they embody 8 types of love through different characters instead of pure destruction. In Bury Your Tears with the Past, Vivian injects herself with the Exalted Sacrifice sample to save Phaethon from an ethereal. The creator is always watching. Peering through Phaethon's eyes, they decide to lend some of their power, and Vivian's corruption is reversed. It isn't healed, it never happens. The timeline was edited, and her sacrifice is on the cutting room floor.
Vivian! Vivian, your body!
I'm sorry you had to see me like this, but I don't want to be the one that only brings misfortune anymore.
No, please, no.
It's so warm, and the night is beautiful.
Vivian? No. It can't end like this!
Now, we also have to talk about the creator. It is one of the most obvious connections to the Honkai games, and ZZZ warns of its presence from the very beginning. The gods, as ever, watch in silence, and oh, the creator is watching. They are staring so intently, and it's because of the hive minds, the most elevated iteration of consciousness in the Hoyoverse. We know who the creator is too, but it's far more complicated than a single entity. We are told very clearly the creator is Saw from Honkai Impact, but we need to discuss what is even going on with Saw. This must take place after they were defeated and floating around doing who knows what in the Sea of Quanta. I know a lot of fans miss this, but Finon and the Flame Reaver are a mirror for Saw and the Cocoon of Finality. We know the goo around the imaginary tree is the Sea of Quanta. It's like information soup. The imaginary tree came out of the Sea of Quanta and it expands, creating time. Because the sea and the tree are always looking to maintain some kind of balance, the tree must continue to grow to match the unfathomable depths of the sea. The tree must drink from the sea in a sense, because it is taking the information and organizing it. This part is cursed by bad localization, but the easiest way to understand how civilizations are a branch and a leaf on the tree at the same time is to see how they show up on this smaller scale. The souls or consciousness of a civilization is the branch. They function as a unit or a hive mind in that state. Each twig is separating this civilization into different patterns. The leaves branching from each twig is a different simulation of that pattern, manifesting as a smaller universe or a bubble universe. When these worlds die, they fall into the Sea of Quanta to be reabsorbed by the tree as it continues to expand. The Honkai is a test these worlds must pass to continue surviving on the tree. But if the tree comes from the Sea of Quanta, doesn't that mean the imaginary and the Honkai must be from the Sea of Quanta? Well, I believe it is, and I think it's actually just information. Whether it's sorted, organized, or chaotic and unknown. Again, we are reminded there is no push and pull between the imaginary tree and the Sea of Quanta, but a cycle they must adhere to. The tree will one day become the sea, and from that, a new tree will be born. In Schrodinger's book, What is Life? He states that what an organism feeds upon is negative entropy. Or to put it less paradoxically, the essential thing in metabolism is that the organism succeeds in freeing itself of all entropy it cannot help producing while alive. I believe this is where we will get our most profound understanding of the imaginary tree. It must remove the disorder produced by these extremely organized zones. This also helps us understand that the sea and tree are most likely a closed system. I know entropy is confusing, but it is the measure of the known and unknown information in a system. So if we're reading this correctly, the imaginary tree, or the singularity of the imaginary tree, is functioning similarly to Maxwell's demon, but not for thermodynamics. When the tree and the sea are truly equal, the tree will no longer be able to do its work and expand. There will be a state of perfect equilibrium, but because the system is closed, the tree must forget everything it knows and return to that singularity that it sprouted from in the Sea of Quanta. This is the finality, the moment we see time cease to exist. It looks like this, the singularity of consciousness sitting between the known and the unknown, appearing to break the very fabric of reality. The creator is the singularity, but moving forward in time from our perspective. And the finality is the singularity moving backward through time. So we are beholden to the third dimensional rules and 2D in the explanations, because there is no way to possibly explain these kinds of concepts in just 3D words. Like, it breaks my brain thinking about how much science research and real physics went into building these worlds. And we understand all of this to be true because we see it on a small scale in ZZZ all the time. It's charming how it's done. And the best example is Miyabi with Talus, because we see so much of what Miyabi, her mother, and her ancestor went through. We see Miyabi's ancestor walk this path of self-sacrifice. When the creator gazes at them, they must forego their humanity and become tailless. When Miyabi inherits tailless the hive mind, we see her fall into the water. This is the ether, the flood, the quanta. These moments with the characters in this water setting are the mindscapes, the same ones we see as copies of the agents and in Isolde going into the final domain. They must confront their inner turmoil to make room or make the correct environment for more of the hive mind or creator's power. Eventually, they must sacrifice their own humanity and enter the hive mind if they choose to walk the path of self-sacrifice, of life, or the creator. We can also confirm that this is what happens with Miyabi's mother in the animations. Her last mindscape ended with sacrificing herself with Tailless. Miyabi sees her mother again in her own mindscape. We see Tailless in their human form deciding to sacrifice their humanity and create the hive mind. Then the following generations, which are mirrored in the paintings in the short film for Miyabi. These are the 7 trials one must pass to be assimilated into the hive mind. The bird looking at Miyabi symbolizes the gaze from the creator, marking the start of the journey. She must pass through all 7 trials, which we see represented by the lessons Miyabi's mother is teaching her. We know this to be true because Yizhuan's 5th mindscape was also this ink-like setting. We know that Isolde's final domain is a physical manifestation of these mindscapes. Her demon ethereal possessed sword is passed down through the Exaltus faction instead of her family. We also see where the universe of ZZZ is in development within the Exaltus symbol. They are on their birth or rebirth portion of their cycle. Now, the story of Zenless Zone Zero may be moving forward in time because that is where they are in their development. But we know the real narrator is the one rewinding the tapes and is most likely outside the timeline, or in a different dimension. Belle and Weiss are incredibly unreliable as narrators, but we know the character choosing which tapes to watch and which ones to rewind is reliable. They're the ones showing us that this universe is regressing. We know Earth is being rewound and reset because it is inspired by the Eridu Genesis myth. It comes full circle, and we see it in all forms, but the most obvious connection is the name of the city in ZZZ. Eridu is the old civilization of the previous era, which is named after the first city in the Eridu Genesis myth. New Eridu is the last city on Earth, and this is more symbolic. Eridu fell 11 years prior to the current year in-game, and 7 generations of the Hoshimi family have passed from the time of Eridu's founding report. We know the key players in the suppression of the catastrophe section were awarded the title of Void Hunter. This report reads like the Bit Missouri incantation. I already did a deep dive on this, so please show that old video some love if you would like a more detailed breakdown. For now, it's important to remember that yes, this is inspired by the Assyrian and Akkadian mythology of ancient Mesopotamia, specifically the versions of the myths and art from the palace of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh. In the game, the ethereal in Hollow Zero and the flowers are both named Nineveh. The persistent use of flowers and the meaning behind them is not subtle. In Dew Gardening, we are told plainly what each flower represents. The one that eludes most players isn't a physical flower, but the structure of the hollows. The hollows have a membrane with this interlocking triangle pattern, which represents or shows us the flower of life motif. The 6-petal flower made of triangles is also featured in the Because of You short film from the Elysian Realm chapters of Honkai Impact. The Helios Academy logo also has this shape. I don't think that's a coincidence, but I do understand that it will give us some insight into what Arki was searching for when he went into Hollow Zero to find the truth. We're also told at some point in the game, it's actually just a blade that cuts through time. It's a physical blade and a metaphorical one. As the 7th Void Hunter, Professor Arki might be the one who is left out of the 6 motif, but I think it's the leader of the Falconane mercenary troop, because it's implied that she has a pink ether core. On the surface, this doesn't seem like much, but it is visual storytelling and a key piece of foreshadowing. Pink is a special color in ZZZ because it stands alone. outside the additive and subtractive primary colors used in the design of the hollows and the ether. There is no specific wavelength for pink in real life or the game. Seeing it comes from an optical illusion. It's also not a color associated with a key. In ZZZ, the keys are 4 Type 3 AI assistants: Fairy, who is blue, Ginny, who is red, Ghost, who is green, and Yukai, who is purple. But what about the other colors? We can see how the hollows are destroying reality within the bubble realms by analyzing the use of colors in them. The ether crystals cast shadows within themselves, showing both the black and white crystals have this cyan, magenta, and yellow glow inside the cracks. When destroying an ethereal, cyan, magenta, and yellow cubes fall from them. While traveling through the fissures, there are only cyan and magenta colored orbs, showing this gold color is not present in these portions of the hollow, creating a wormhole-like tunnel by removing the building blocks. This is also how Belle and Wise are able to manipulate the hollows and create fissures. Their innate abilities are connected to this gold-colored building block of the hollow. We also see how these hollows are higher dimensional spaces with their own laws of physics by really looking at these crystals. I linked a video below showing what is happening within them, but we are also shown that the radiating light and the things casting the shadows could be coming from a higher dimension. We haven't seen all the colors of the ether crystals yet. For now, we have magenta, green, and yellow. Until we get the third location, I don't think we're going to see anything beyond the hints in the Aerospace Center. I believe this is an aspect of the sci-fi inspired by the standard model of elementary particles. The standard model explains what the 12 fundamental particles are and what forces move them. There are 4 standard forces. We see some bonkers stuff in nature, and it seems like these extreme conditions are a perfect way to create strange matter in this fantasy setting. The hollows are breaking down all matter into the smallest form, and crystals are forming as space, time, and information distort. Why not have the very fabric of reality crystallize in a hollow? But that's not really the creator's goal. Why do they want to change the universe this civilization is in so drastically? After learning more about who the creator is, we know they want to test the people of New Eridu, and this final flood is a trial of life. Similar to Saw's boss fight being labeled the tribulation of life. Saw's goal was always to stop finality from reversing time, which is mirrored in the Exaltus goals. They would like the people of New Eridu to be converted into sacrifices so that they can join the hive mind and transcend time. Part of ensuring this plan means that the ethereals must also be able to leave the hollow. They are too big for the third dimension. They distort space-time to make room for their bodies and the correct environment so they can survive. This is why the hollows are physically removing matter from this universe. We don't know if it's being used to power some other project by an outside character, or if that information is just lost to the sea. To understanding is in Hollow Zero when we fight Geppetto and see the lower tier ethereals are sent to create this environment. They are just puppets for the Hive Lord. This confirms the hive mind aspect, but we see it throughout the game. In the Starlight Knights video on the loading screen, we see Black Hole and Black Hole's minions. Miyabi talks about being watched from a higher dimension and has a fascination with bees. Geppetto is shown as a second-tier ethereal, producing these tethers to its minions, but unlike Miyabi's beehive and Black Hole, Geppetto is being controlled by a higher ethereal who cannot descend into this space because Geppetto was defeated before it could convert the hollow from holding things to being hollow. In ZZZ, all the godlike beings are in the creator hive mind. Their power is implied to come from the different manifestations of the ether. We also see them follow this color scheme of magenta, cyan, and yellow. Topo in the outer ring is shown with magenta flowers on the cactus. The sea god, or the fish god statue, the scion of the sea god, the god of the ocean, and the god of swordsmanship are all associated with the color cyan. The god of the sun and fire, Helios, Professor Archie, and Elpis are all shown to be associated with the color yellow. But the creator is only ever shown in black and white. We also see characters get grouped into the types of hive minds, whether it's the cyan, yellow, or magenta. We know that Miyabi's mindscape was to fight against the hive mind, and if you press the button to attack, Miyabi will compose herself and only move forward. We know this is Miyabi losing some of her humanity and going deeper into the tailless hive mind, but this is her sacrifice and she does pass the test. Belle and Wise are different though. We only see it visually for them, but we know it will become important later in the story. The poster for the movie, This Is How I Am, has the yellow writing, and the flower is held up to form an eye staring back at the observer. The two hands belonging to the observer are bound to the hive mind. They aren't at the top or the bottom. This is an old civilization film and both of the Phaethon's favorite movie because it reminds them of when they were living in the bustling Eridu. The closest we get to Helios Academy is in Seed's agent story, but we are quickly disappointed to learn that she doesn't remember most of her time there, but we do find out that they were continuing to do these horrific experiments to make the Exaltus plan possible, even after the old capital fell. I think the Void Hunter that they were always trying to replicate is the leader of the Falconane mercenary troop. We see that pink is such a special color, and now you know 100% why I believe pink is a special color. It doesn't show up anywhere in any of this deep lore. I had to keep looking, and Nicole, Rain, Yanagi, and the other pink-haired characters, they're all very important, but that's not where I found the foreshadowing for the leader of the Falconane mercenary troop. That was in Kaleda's agent story. I know I talked about this before, but I would like to recap. The three Void Hunters that push the Dark Wall back are Colonel Vike, Lieutenant Colonel Dan, and the leader of the Falconane mercenary troop. The three students that get lost in the hollow during Kaleda's agent story are named Emmy, Leisha, and Dan. It's hiding in plain sight. Okay, look at Emmy's hair and Colonel Vike's hair. They have the same decoration, tying their hair back, and she is the outsider of the group. Her father is the principal, and she switches schools by the end of the agent story. The other two get lost in the hollow while following Emmy. This lines up too perfectly with what happens in the animations for the Obsidian Blade commissions. Obsidian Blade is the account for an unnamed mercenary troop leader with contracts for the new Eridu Defense Force. We usually get established rules for the deep lore through internet posts and one-off jokes, if we're lucky, visual foreshadowing or visual storytelling. But I doubt this is the Falconane mercenary troop. It could be like the Sons of Caledon being a different group than Caledon. They might as well be the same, but we're still not sure. The posts from the Obsidian Blade are color-coded like the 4 AI from the lore teaser: blue, red, green, and purple. We also know the Dark Wall will look like this once you click into the post, because it matches the HIA VR stages, the hollow distortions in the crystals, as well as when we see the Dark Wall in the lore teaser video. I think all of this is leading to this person, this block in the middle, being the leader of the Falconane mercenary troop. Inside the post, we see that there are black cubes with a purple core representing the ethereals. So this block containing the pink core must have something special about them, and we can confirm this with other established lore in ZZZ. In the lore teaser, she is shown with having white pupils. This means that she is inside of a form of hive mind, and she is very far into it. For anyone who hasn't noticed, the Elysian Realm and Emborius arcs have a huge influence on all of Zenless's story. We know they are in a simulation, or more accurately, someone is watching this story on tapes and manipulating it as we go along. As a Hoyo fan, I think this is a very impactful delivery of the topics explored, but it's also a nod to the leader of the Falconane mercenary troop being an Elysia XP. It also implies that she will probably be playable after the rewind or reset. We can confirm this by talking about the flower symbolism again. The white flower versus the red flower. This is the most important piece of symbolism on the Falconane mercenary troop leader's design. In Isolde's cutscene, we see her injury is reversed when she fails to pass through the final domain. Once she confronts her own inner turmoil and comes to peace with everything that has happened, she pulls out a toy gun and uses it on Orphea and Magus. They got there too late. Isolde was already doomed, and she sacrifices herself to reveal the truth behind the casualties during the fall of the old capital. It's interesting that we also see this white flower motif on Pokakakamon from Honkai Star Rail. Her connections to finality are suspicious. She has this mask which looks like corruption, and her rubber ducky model has the same pattern as the hollows. The flowers we see on the leader of the Falconian mercenary troop are red, and after seeing what happens to Isolde, this implies that she has gone through several simulations or iterations of the final domain, and she successfully reached it. She probably was one of the characters who broke the timeline in ZZZ. I talked about Sunbringer still being alive months before it was confirmed in the game, and I mentioned it seems like other characters exist in this timeless state. This feels like soft confirmation now that we have more established rules for the symbolism and world building. This theme of duality is posted all over Zenless. It's difficult to avoid, but I noticed this peculiar string of numbers in the game, and I've been trying to figure out why it was there and what it meant. I also couldn't figure out if it was 4728 or 4278. I was stumped, but I was being silly. It's a reference to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where the meaning of life is 42. But the 78? I had to Google it, I have to admit. It means death and is associated with death in a few cultures. Now, I could be wrong, but I think this is supposed to be part of a sphere of life and death that we see in another string of numbers throughout the game. I'm still working on all of the deep lore for that, but for now we know the theme of duality is vital to understanding what it means. We're at the end of the video, finally. Okay, if you made it this far, thank you so much. You owe me a subscription. I gave you almost half an hour of entertainment. Thank you again. Please share this video so the creator will refine me. I don't want to do anything anymore, and being in a hive mind sounds like a great time. Thank you again. I'll see you in the next one.